Hello, my name is Noah, and I'm going to show you the basics of working with Eclipse software for making a transcript. So here on the right-hand side of the screen, uh, we're going to do this checklist of things for making a transcript. First of all, to check what version of Eclipse you have, as you can see by my face, this is for version 6 and up. Some of the things will be different if you're older than that. Eclipse might just tell you what version you have here, but you can also go to Help and About Eclipse. I'm not going to click it because it shows you your license number, but if you click here on About Eclipse, it tells you what version you have. Okay, on to the basics of file management, and this is a basic video. If you click Files, it will bring up all your jobs, and you'll notice that each job has at least 3 files probably associated with it. One is the notes, one is the text document, and one is the dictionary. You're probably going to want to open all 3, or 4 if there's an audio file, but you could open up an individual one. So if you just wanted to see the notes, for example, you might click that and hit open. Should mention that if you don't see these toolbars, you can essentially go to, I think it's view toggles or something, and change these around, toolbars 1, etc. Okay, I also want to show you one other thing within file management. If you were to go to your documents on your computer, on your Windows computer, again for version 6 and above on Eclipse, and you go to Documents and then Eclipse, and you'll probably see your name here. You won't see N colon, but it will show you all your jobs. So this is a duplicate information of what you see here in this files folder. This is exactly what you would see within Windows Explorer. It's the same information. If you're working on a job and you don't want to change it, or you don't want to modify an original job, you might do something like, if you want to take this December 27th, 2017 job at whatever, you'll take these 3 files, excuse me, the right files, make sure you select the right ones, not like I'm doing here, and you might choose to copy them. Don't know where they just went. And then repaste them into the same things, and you'll notice now they're named copy. And maybe I'll also select all 3 and rename them, you know, Noah's demo or something. And now you'll see there I changed them within this Eclipse file. And similarly, if I were to go here and I can find a job, you can sort by the job name by clicking here. I'll go to find N as in Nancy for Noah's demo. It would be right here. Here's Noah's demo. And you would click this box and hit open. And this opens up a file. This happens to be a blank file. But typically, if you open up any other file, I'll just choose one at random here, hit open, and it shows you some transcripts there. Okay, let's go on to making a new file or a transcript. So again, you're probably going to want to make transcripts. You hit, as you can see on my keyboard, Alt and E. Or conversely, I believe you can hit Open Text within the File menu. And you'll notice here within Eclipse, all of the hotkeys are listed to the right of what you're attempting to do. So Alt-E, as I just mentioned, is listed as Open Text. So again, I'll employ that hotkey and hit Alt on the keyboard and then press E, and it's attempting to open a job. But maybe I want to call this dummy transcript 1, or what have you. They'll name it appropriately, they'll press enter, and they'll say no such file exists. You dummy transcript 1, this doesn't exist, do you want to create this file? And it might ask you more than once. Okay, the next thing you're probably going to want to do to make a transcript is read in things. This might mean that you're reading in a job or title page, etc. So you might want to start with a title page. So I have, I think, such a title page. This is a Queens Criminal title page for the Legal Aid Society, and I sort of set this up already. Just to repeat what I just did there, I'll just delete it all, just selecting everything, holding Shift to select more. I press delete, and it deletes it. I'm pressing Alt-R, selecting what I want to read in, and hitting open, and it reads it in. And you can see I'm still within the dummy transcript 1 file that we just made. This has these forms that you might want to read in. You can fill in the blanks. You can press, if you don't see this menu here, it's again in the same spot where you get a view. I think this one's called the info bar. So you have window, view, and info bar. And this can be modified more, but you can see I can press fill in all blanks, and I press E. I think if you were to right click on the blank, it would bring it up. You might call this parts, what. It fills it in. And you notice that for mine, I set it up so that it immediately goes into the next field, and I can fill in each subsequent field. If you want to know I'm going to go over the brief basics of making a page like this, but you won't need to do that. So again, I'll press Alt. Within Eclipse, I'll press Alt-E to make a new job. I'll press, dummy, I'll type dummy form 1. It doesn't exist. I press Enter to make it exist. So now we're in dummy form 1. And to insert, you might type in some information, like this is an example. And, here's a form. And now I want to put a form here. And so I will go to Edit and Insert and Add Blank. This is more technically called a blank. But you can see, by the way, the hotkey happens to be here. It's Shift-E. So I might just press Shift-E right there. And now I can add a blank. Here are some of the basics, but maybe put the date here or something. And that'll be the label that it has. You can make it so it has to capitalize its contents. You can make up associated files. We're not going to do any of that. But that's the basics of making a form. Okay. So to go back to editing a transcript, let's get out of this form we just made. If I were to open up I pressed Alt-E to open a file, and it happens to be sorted, in this case, by date modified. I might sort it by name if I were more interested, but I will sort by date modified. Here's the dummy transcript one I made earlier in the video. And you can see that here's some information. I will delete this. I will press Alt-R to read in something. Here's the dummy form one I just made. And now if I want to fill this in, I can put my mouse and it shows it there, or I can right-click on it and fill in. And I'll put today's date, which happens to be August 10th of 2019. You can see it fills it in there. And it's capitalized because some checkbox I clicked earlier. Let's read in another job into dummy transcript 1. I'll just pick something random here. Apparently I'm screwing around or something. You'll notice that okay, I have no idea what I read in here. We're going to get to using hyperkeys in a minute, but I just want to point out some of the basics of editing a transcript. Obviously, this is kind of nonsense, whatever this stuff is here, but I think I was testing out my keyboard, it looks like, but you're going to want, if you know Steno, if you're doing your own job, you're going to see that the cursor, as you move the cursor around, corresponds to the Steno. This is a comma, this is if it came out better on the front end. You can see that it corresponds to that English there. So let's go on to, if you were trying to proofread this, you need to be familiar with, the basic idea of what is said and whatnot. You might, all right, so let's just go on with using hyperkeys. You'll notice on the keyboard overlay that's on the screen that I'm pressing a few different buttons and they're having different effects. So let me just show you the basics. This is I moves the cursor up, J moves the cursor down. Excuse me, I missed that. K as in kangaroo, moves the cursor down. J moves it to the left, and L moves it to the right. And you'll sort of notice as I push them all that it's analogous to the arrow keys over here on the bottom right-hand side of your keyboard. It's in a different spot, so you can keep your hands in sort of a home position and move the cursor around. I'm going to go over a couple basic hotkeys that I use all the time. Start with A. A capitalizes a word, so it's to toggle capitalization. I should mention that if you want to move the cursor less than one word, hold down Shift and then press the move button, and that will move the cursor, just a little bit, one letter at a time, to the left or right. This is more of a hotkey, but if you wanted to change its from one form to another, its is a homonym or homophone or whatever it's called. So this is, I'm pressing the tilde key, and that sort of moves up an apostrophe to its potentially appropriate place. It just toggles through different possibilities, and you can see if you hit it several times, it sort of gives you this crazy menu, but you can see it doesn't really make a lot of sense in a lot of instances, but you can press tilde to put in an apostrophe. You can press D is to delete a word. D as in David deletes a word, and I mentioned that Z is to undo a word. I should have mentioned, this is a little out of sync, that I have the hyperkeys box checked here, the toggles. If you wanted to toggle it off, and then you see now the cursor bears more resemblance to a normal cursor. And now if I were to type something, it just fills it in like as though you were in a, a normal word editor. So all these functions only work if you have hyperkeys checked, and that's why we're going over hyperkeys. Q changes the sentence that you're on to a question, so you'll see that it moved to the cursor there and automatically made it a question. Again, if I wanted to undo that, I could press Z, and that undoes it. You'll see undo has a mind of its own some of the time, so you have to come in here. And again, if I were to make it a question by pressing Q, I could conversely press P to make it a period at the end of a sentence. You can also just type period anywhere, and with hyperkeys on, I believe, it sort of puts the correct spacing and capitalization in. And you can see that Z sort of has a mind of its own as I press undo, so don't be too reliant on undo. I'll mention W briefly. W brings up this little menu where you can add prefixes or suffixes. I rarely use this, but I use it sometimes. You can press S to make something, it adds an S to the end of whatever word you're on, and it does that intelligently, so software is not a good example. I'm trying to see if there's a better example here, but if I hit W and S on pitch here, it's going to put in the ES. So I press W and I press S, and you can see it didn't just automatically add the S at the end, it correctly put in the ES. There's also, you can press W and then D as in David. And there's a whole scroll down here. You could read through it if you want, but that added the ED, and it will do that intelligently too. So if there's some anomaly when an I needs to be changed to a Y, or who knows what, like as in hurried, excuse me, all the way around, a Y needs to be changed to an I, it'll do that as well. I think what other hotkeys I really use on a daily basis. I seriously think that that's about it. I use these cursors to move around. I can change, sentences to a question or an answer quickly. If I need to, you can just press the comma button. It automatically puts the comma on the previous word and does the spacing. I can't think of anything else as far as hyperkeys go. I should mention that if you want to, I don't have it on this computer as a demo, but you can come to help and you can go to Eclipse documentation. Usually this would open up a folder. It's not on this computer at the moment, but one of the PDFs in the documentation would be a hyperkeys PDF, or using Eclipse hyperkeys. And there's a big list of every hyperkey you can use. I think a lot of them are superfluous. I showed you the ones I think you'll use all the time. There's a few other hotkeys that are not hyperkeys, so they would work even if you had hyperkeys unchecked. If I press F3 anywhere, that changes it to a question. And if I press F4 anywhere, that changes it to an answer. I'm not sure that that's coming up on my display. I'm not sure that anything's coming up. Okay. As I said, F4 will make something an answer, and F3 will make something a question. You can see it cuts off the middle of the word. All right. I don't particularly remember too many other hotkeys, so I'll just leave it at that. I should mention also, I mentioned briefly that you can use the help, and this is a very good, maybe an incredible help section in Eclipse. Whatever you have a question about, if you type it into the search bar in the index, you're going to get a little information and step-by-step about how to do it. So I just mentioned that. You may have mentioned as I was going over as you open a file and you look at a transcript, this one you'll notice has one icon to the right of it, the dummy transcript one. But most of my jobs will have 3 files or 4 files in them. One represents the notes, one is the so-called ECL file, and the last is a dictionary. Hopefully this is not oversimplified, but if you press dictionary, all stenographers have a dictionary, and every job has an accompanying dictionary. So if I were to open a random job here, it looks like I made, I wouldn't, these are sort of dumb, but obviously you can press F9 to bring up the dictionary menu. It's the same as clicking that. Press F9, and if I type my main dictionary into here, these are all the steno. This is the steno in this column, and this is the text in this column. You can see how old of a steno stroke it is when it was made. You can see the most commonly or least commonly used strokes. It happens to be that, I use the comma the most, followed by the word the and of and to and This is kind of logical. as far as editing a transcript, you might encounter a job where uh, you know, the stenographer put a lot of names into the job dictionary, uh, and you'll find the names in that job dictionary. I should mention that going back to a demo, uh, when you highlight, you can highlight words with the mouse, or here's another hotkey I left out, press an M. An M will highlight the subsequent word. So if maybe I want to say minimum fines, and you can see it highlighted both on the steno over here and the English over here. If I press M is to highlight several words. You can alternatively press F7, I should mention, that does the same function. M is the hyperkey for it, so if I had hyperkeys off and I just started typing M, you would see it would just come out as M. But if I were to press F7 now, it does the same function. But with hyperkeys on, I'll press M, and it highlights those words. Perhaps I want to add this to a dictionary. The hyperkey for that is G. And I believe without hyperkeys on, you can press Control G, which does the exact same function. You'll notice that it brings up this menu, and maybe I want to change. It has some suggestions here. Maybe I want to change this to Unifence. I have no idea what that is. But say I wanted this to be minimum fines. I can now put this in my main dictionary, and my main dictionary was that one I opened a moment ago, the M colon, or I could alternatively put it in the job dictionary, and you'll see that this is the name of the job that we're in. It's a match, May 23rd of 2019, and I would press OK, and that goes in this job dictionary. And now I press F9, and it shows me the dictionaries of the job I'm in, and I open up this dictionary, the one I just entered that in. Here's minimum fines in the job dictionary. That's useful if you see a lot of phrases that are repeated. It's a little niche to explain why that's useful, but if you were doing a very big job, you would start to enter things into a job dictionary as opposed to the main dictionary, and that's a lesson for a whole nother day. But that's the basics of the dictionary. I just, mistakes to look for, it's sort of, this is not, I'm familiar with the subject matter that's going on in this transcript, so this might be, are you doing that voluntarily? And that's a question. Unless the defendant's not saying why, he's probably saying yes. And I would delete that, and I'm just confident in that. And then this would be, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs to make you not understand what's going on here? And that's a question. I could have left it like this, but it's just ungrammatical and not prudent. You essentially want to, you're proofreading, you're editing, and then here's an instance where it's no, and I'm looking at my steno here. I can see I made a stacking error. So this, please you can see that there's a little colloquy between the court and the defendant here. This would not be a logical thing for the defendant to say, and he's answering his own question. There's a hotkey I left out. So you need to put in the court. I'll press F2, and this brings up a speaker list. If I wanted to, I could add a new speaker. So maybe I'll have it be, Mr. Jones or something. And now it's Mr. Jones saying that. And obviously I know that's a mistake. So I'll go back. I could click it, or when I'm, adjacent to it, I can press delete to highlight it, ironically enough, or it's a little hard. You can't get there directly using the hyperkey, so you have to go next to it and press backspace. You'll press F2 to bring up the speaker list menu, and you'll select the right one. Now that's fixed. Please tell the court on the 16th day of October 2016, County of Nassau, where you operate a motor vehicle. Yes, what was the status of your license suspended? Did you know or have reason to know that on that day? And I admittedly know that this should be your license was suspended. I'm not proud to acknowledge that I dropped that much, but that's what happened. How do you plead to aggravated unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle? Guilty. This is supposed to be waive any delay in sentence. Yes, people, anything. That's the court asking that. That's a typo. No. This is the court, the council, anything. And so you can see I'm proofreading it and I'm transcribing it. It's just going to take practice. I'll also mention here, just at the end of this video, that there's a spell check feature. It's this icon here. And it for example, I caught here the double speaker. It brings up suggestions of what you want to do over here. You can ignore something. Another double speaker you can ignore. This is Hofstra. Hofstra is a college in New York, and I might choose to add that to the dictionary. So I'll add that. Thank you, God bless you. This is supposed to be a period at the end of this sentence. So I'll select period, hit change. Nevins. That's a lawyer. I recognize the last name. So maybe I don't want to add that to the dictionary because I don't see her every day. But maybe for this transcript, I'll not just ignore this instance of it, but ignore all instances of it for this transcript. Same thing here. This is something I put at the end of every transcript. I'll ignore all those asterisks. This is a double speaker. If I press delete, it'll delete the second instance of it and bring this July 5th back to the previous line. Again, unfortunately, I can't ignore all, so I'll keep hitting that. Spell check is complete. All right, I hope this is good enough for the basics. Just going over the hotkeys again, the hyperkeys. These are to move the cursor around. I moves it up, K moves it down, J is to the left, L is to the right. P changes the current sentence into a sentence ending with a period, and Q turns it into one with a sentence, with a question mark, excuse me. You can press M to highlight something. You might choose to then delete all three of those. You could also just press D as a hyperkey, and that will delete several words. Press Z to undo that. A capitalizes things. That's basically it. All right, thanks for watching.